This is a public health announcement brought to you by Heather Shepard,
the Primal Pioneer. Live an outdoor life.
Welcome to the Primal Pioneer podcast. I'm your host, Heather Shepard, radical health practitioner and creator of the Sunlight RX. Today, I'm stoked to dive into the forbidden fruits of alternative cancer therapies and root causes of cancer. During this episode, I'll be discussing chemotherapy. How effective has this therapy proven to be over the past 40 years? Is this the right therapy for you? And how can you make the right decision for you when it comes to cancer and cancer treatment? I'll be discussing all of this and more, including root causes of cancer, how your mitochondrial health plays a role in cancer, is cancer really a metabolic disease, and how do we truly heal our metabolism? So I'll be sharing all this and more during this radical health, mind-blowing episode all about cancer and cancer therapies. I'm super stoked to dive into this episode with you all around chemotherapy and cancer therapies, including root causes of cancer. The topic of cancer and helping to support people in a truly holistic and empowering way around a cancer diagnosis and healing path is something that I'm super passionate about after having lost my grandmother to breast cancer that metastasized to her brain and bones when I was 15 years old. After watching her struggle and seeing her health quickly diminish and her quality of life literally crumble in a matter of months after her cancer diagnosis, not from the cancer, mind you, but as a result of the chemo and radiation therapy she engaged in, well, from then on, I decided I was going to learn everything about cancer from a natural, holistic perspective because I knew there were much better ways to approach the disease that would vitalize one's life force instead of poisoning the body and breaking it down, which chemo and radiation do. Let's just be honest, we can't deny that fact. Since witnessing my grandmother's struggle with the standard of care cancer therapies, I was determined to help others with cancer that had a desire to do cancer treatment differently to help enhance their life, improve cancer survival rates, and with the hope and intent to teach those with cancer a way to heal their body that would not only help them overcome cancer. Okay, yes, of course we want to do that, but also would allow them to feel and be the healthiest they ever had at any point in their life. So I want people to actually feel the best that they've ever felt in their life after undergoing these alternative and holistic therapies that I incorporate with people who have cancer. So about 4 years ago, I started a Facebook group called the Keto Cancer Solution. And my intent behind creating this group was to help people fine-tune their diet to support their cancer healing journey. Yes, of course, because we know a ketogenic-based diet can be a supportive therapy and protocol that people with cancer implement into their lifestyles and treatment programs to support their cancer healing journey. However, as a radical health practitioner, I also created this group to help educate people around root causes of cancer and to help make people more aware of the multiple alternative cancer therapies that exist outside the conventional medical model. One thing that I've noticed over my 9 years of working with cancer patients and managing the Keto Cancer Solution Facebook group is that literally over 90% of people with cancer, they truly believe they have to go the conventional medical route. And while this could be the route that is best for you or that you're most called to, most people are very hesitant to enter this system. And they're very skeptical of the system, and they don't intuitively feel like this is the right route for them. And this is mainly because cancer patients, especially women with male doctors, now not that male doctors are bad, because I know a lot of really amazing male doctors who don't play a hierarchical role and who don't, kind of prey on women and try to coerce them into a treatment or even into a supplement routine. It's not just male doctors in the conventional world, but also in the alternative world. They, just because of this dynamic that's been created between men and women, as men being kind of in this hierarchical position and being in this position where they delegate and tell women what to do, this is kind of the energy that's been created for years and years and years between men and women. So this dynamic that often happens between women clients and male doctors, there's often this coerced energy behind it, this fear. And so, of course, both men and women feel very pressured into these conventional and or alternative therapies. So patients are even threatened if they don't do chemo or radiation, as doctors literally tell their patients that they'll die prematurely if they don't immediately undergo conventional cancer care. So a lot of people with cancer, both men and women, they feel really pressured to get into this system, and they feel like it's their best choice and their only choice. However, I'm going to reveal throughout this episode that chemo in particular actually shortens lifespan and survival rate more so than if a cancer patient were to literally engage in no therapy at all. So you didn't even change your diet. You didn't even take some supplements. You didn't even increase your sunlight exposure, mitigate your EMFs. You literally can do nothing at all. And your lifespan and survival rate, according to the statistics and the data, are actually better. Really interesting, huh? But the medical community will make it sound like chemo and radiation are your only choices and your best choices at that. And if you go against these choices, they'll often refuse to continue working with you, and or their staff will bombard your phone and just continue to call you, advising you to make an appointment to start chemo or radiation, or go in for more testing and more scans. Your family might even start turning on you or desperately urging you to engage in conventional therapies. And so you may have experienced one or all of these things. And often this leads to you doubting yourself, forget your intuition. It's totally thrown away. It's totally out the door. And your healthcare choices now go in the hands of quote unquote experts and people who know best about you. And so this leaves most cancer patients feeling super trapped, and that their only hope of survival is to enter the standard of care system to approach this disease. If you're someone who has cancer, or maybe you have a loved one afflicted with a disease, we all know somebody with cancer, and often multiple people. And so if you're in this situation, I would highly encourage you to seek out the best options for you before making any treatment decisions. And hopefully this episode will start to help you do so. It's important to note, and I really want to emphasize, that the best cancer therapy for you is the one that you feel intuitively called to, and the one that you feel good about. And so I invite you to let that be your beacon, okay? Let it lead you when choosing your cancer treatment route. When it comes to the cancer options offered by the standard of care, surgery is by far the least toxic route in my experience. I know many fear metastasis as a side effect of surgery, which honestly is a very considerable question and exploration. However, if you do choose to undergo surgery, know that this is often the least toxic, okay? You're not going to be dumping a bunch of chemicals and toxins and poisons in your body from chemo and radiation. However, once you've had the surgery, it's really important to take proactive measures to prevent any spreading or reoccurrence of the cancer by engaging in long-term holistic treatments, detox strategies, post-surgery for several years, and often to some extent for the rest of your life. Because most people on the Keto Cancer Solution group, or when they come to me saying, hey, Heather, I want to do some one-on-one work with you around cancer. I've had surgery and, that's all I've done. Or I've had chemo and radiation and that's all I've done. Really, if you have cancer, despite what treatment route you've gone, it's really, really important that the treatment route is more of an ongoing thing. It's not just this one and done thing. This is something you really need to continue with throughout your life to help remove cancer toxins, because cancer toxins, they, just like all bacteria, all virus, all fungus, all diseases, secrete certain toxins. And so even though cancer may not show up on a scan, or your cancer markers on your labs might not be high, you could still have cells that are secreting cancer toxins in your body. Okay. And so we want to continually kind of clean house, so to speak, to continue to remove these cancer toxins, because they just don't go away after something like surgery, chemo, radiation, or even say a round of a natural therapy like mistletoe or IV vitamin C, which I'll get into that just a little bit later on the episode. So cancer and approaching the disease is really an ongoing process. I also want to mention that if you do undergo chemo and or radiation, you cannot simply go back to living your normal life. I mean, okay, you can. You have the decision to do whatever you want, but it's not something I suggest. I don't suggest, having a certain protocol done, whether it's conventional or natural, to approach your cancer, and then just, going back to the same lifestyle and environment you were living before your diagnosis. And here's 3 main reasons why. Number 1, you cannot heal in the environment in which you got sick. So let's say you got cancer, or it was fueled by living in an environment that was bombarded with artificial light, and you were living under, LED light. You were looking at a screen all day. You're looking at your cell phone all day. This really disturbs metabolic and hormonal signaling, and it disturbs hormone levels and this cortisol melatonin balance that teeter-totters throughout the day. It really disturbs these things. And these are main elements of your circadian biology. It's like your internal clock, right? And so artificial light is a huge disruptor of that. So let's say you had chemo and you did the ketogenic diet, okay? And your cancer markers are down and there's no sign of cancer in your body. But you go back to living your life after these treatments and therapies. You go back to living under artificial light and, looking at a screen, and you don't fix this aspect of, your health and your environment. Well, that environment in itself is one that I consider a major block to healing. Meaning, if this aspect of the environment isn't improved, sickness will result and you simply cannot live the optimal health that you desire. You simply can't get there from there, okay? So you can't heal in an environment in which you got sick. And artificial light is just one example. We don't really even consider artificial light a main cause of cancer. But in 1879, and then shortly after, when the light bulb was discovered in electricity, this is when we started to see massive, massive increases in cancer rates across the board. But most cancer treatments and therapies, they don't add this into their treatment strategy and plan. But it's super important, and it's a big one that I use and teach people about. So no, this is just one example. Number 1, you can't heal in the environment in which you got sick. No matter what therapy you have undergone, you still need to change your environment, okay? A therapy will not change your environment. Number 2, cancer equals cellular toxicity. So you need to detox, especially after conventional therapies, for years and years post the cancer treatment. So let's say you got chemo, you got radiation. Most people simply want to go back to living their normal life. And while I totally get that, I completely understand. However, there are many life shifts that need to occur to continue to support your body's healing process and ability to heal and continue to wipe out these cellular toxicities that were at the root of, your cancer diagnosis. And engaging in something like chemo and or radiation, this adds way more toxins to the picture than you first started with. And removing toxins like chemo and radiation from the body can take years and years, if not the rest of your life, literally after these therapies, to detox from your cells, your tissues, your organs, and all their poisons. Really, these take time to remove from your body and to simply prevent reoccurrence. So we need to continuously remove and work on cellular toxicity removal. Number 3, chemo plus radiation plus surgery do not rectify the root causes of cancer. And we could also add in there that, let's say, other alternative therapies like mistletoe therapy, like IV vitamin C, like hyperthermia, like these sort of treatments, alternative therapies for cancer, these also won't rectify root causes of cancer. They're going to, especially, I should say, the alternative ones only will help to remove the tumor. But again, we need this solid foundation to work from, and we need to continuously improve one's environment in order to continue to support the healing process and to get to these root layers that are behind a cancer diagnosis. So I'm going to get into the root causes of cancer as we go deeper into the episode. However, before we go there, if you're someone on the fence about engaging in chemo or radiation therapy as a main avenue to approaching a cancer diagnosis, I would encourage you to explore the peer-reviewed data and independent studies on your particular cancer before doing so. And there are many things to take into account before signing up for chemo or radiation, no matter how much pressure you're feeling from someone else. It's your body, it's your decision, and you have time to think about how you want to approach this situation, okay? What feels best to you? And so there's some things to take into account before signing up for chemo or radiation. And so these are some questions that I would encourage you to explore or ask yourself. Questions such as, what is your toxicity level like? Okay, because if you're dealing with a high toxic load, let's say you've had a mouthful of mercury fillings, amalgam fillings, or you've been around Agent Orange, or you have had a lot of x-rays in your life, or you grew up next to a field that was heavily sprayed with pesticides. Okay, these sort of things. If your toxicity levels are already high, adding a lot more toxins and poisons to the picture that are present in chemo and radiation might not be the best idea. Your body may not respond very well to just adding more toxins to the picture, okay? Another question is, what are your energy levels like? Chemo and radiation will diminish energy levels. They do so because they diminish mitochondrial function. So this is a big consideration. If you're already struggling with poor energy levels, does it make sense to engage in a therapy that's going to further deplete your energy levels, which is a root cause of cancer in the first place? And the next question, which kind of goes in hand with this, is how is your sleep? Those that struggle with sleep who have cancer often go the CBD route, okay? So they'll often do high doses of CBD. And this actually, while it can be okay, let's say in short-term use to help prevent things like nausea, vomiting, upset stomach during chemo treatments, a lot of people become dependent on CBD and they can't sleep without it. And so something that I've noticed in my practice is that when somebody reaches out for help with alternative ways to approach cancer and a cancer diagnosis, many people are on CBD. They say they cannot sleep without it, or they feel so much pain that they need the CBD to help them. But one of my major issues with CBD is because people often struggle to find a dose that's small enough to make an impact while simultaneously not making them feel super lethargic. So a lot of people who take CBD, like they'll take it at nighttime to help them sleep, and then they'll have CBD in their system that they feel so groggy and don't get out of bed till 10, 11, 12. And so this completely disrupts your circadian biology, because the whole point of overcoming cancer is to help reset your circadian biology, right? Okay, your internal clock system isn't working. So taking large doses of CBD, you completely miss the sunlight RX in the beginning of the day, which is absolutely key to resetting your circadian biology and getting your dose of red light to help regenerate your cells and to stimulate these processes so important in cancer, autophagy and apoptosis, okay? So my concern with CBD is that it doesn't help people reset their circadian biology. It actually usually has a detrimental effect. And so this is why I don't suggest it for long-term use. That was kind of an aside that I went into with the question, how is your sleep? But if you already are struggling with your sleep and you engage in chemotherapy, a big part of chemotherapy is you get a huge dose of steroids, okay? This is part of the chemo cocktail. And so many people after their chemo treatments, they can't sleep for days and their circadian biology totally gets a big bang, they get totally knocked out from it. And this completely disrupts cortisol levels. It disrupts the melatonin cortisol balance and teeter-totter. That's super crucial to have in balance, especially when healing from cancer. So if you're already struggling with sleep in big ways, it may be worth questioning, hey, is chemo and or radiation the best route for me? Also, do you have a strong, robust immune system? If you struggle with immunity already before going into chemo or radiation, we know these things break down and compromise the immune system. And the last thing I want somebody with cancer is to further compromise their immunity. I want their immunity to be super strong so their body can detox, remove cancer toxins, and remove root causes of cancer. Also, and maybe most importantly, is what is your gut and intuition telling you about cancer therapies? Like, which one are you most called to? I wouldn't suggest making a cancer therapy decision based on a should. So if you hear yourself saying, I should just do chemotherapy and get it over with, so everyone can leave me alone, or so I give it my best shot, or I should do radiation, or hey, even I should do mistletoe therapy. If you put a should in front of anything, it's likely not the thing you're intuitively called to do. So you really want to explore that. What do you feel is going to be best for your body? What is the treatment that you're most called to, not out of a should, but because you would legit choose that healing path, okay? So let's get into conventional care a little bit, because I want to particularly focus on chemo so you have an idea as to how effective it is if you choose this route. So conventional cancer treatments have one goal, and that is shrinking the tumor. This is how success rates are measured and documented in the literature. How well does the tumor shrink? How much does the tumor shrink? So let's take, for example, if you have a 5 by 5 centimeter tumor in your pancreas and you undergo chemo and it shrinks to a 1:1 centimeter, okay, ratio, the treatment is considered successful, okay? So survival and quality of life are not currently their markers of success. Tumor shrinkage is. Okay. And while tumor shrinkage is awesome, like if you have a tumor, yeah, you want it to shrink, obviously, right? However, what's important to note is that successfully shrinking a tumor doesn't necessarily equal a better outcome for the patient. The toxicity of the treatment often means that the patient will die sooner and experience a worsened quality of life than if no treatment had been given at all. And this was the exact case for my grandmother. And I've witnessed this same pattern and outcome in many cancer patients. It doesn't mean it's going to be your story. I'm just saying I've witnessed it. And I've witnessed a lot of people, their health, their quality of life diminish after undergoing chemo. So let's take a look at the chemo statistics and the outcome that this standard of care treatment has on cancer patients. And to accurately do so, we have to take a look at the work of Dr. Ulrich Abel. And since Nixon declared the war on cancer in 1971, 20 years later, Dr. Abel wanted to see the degree of progress that we've made with cancer treatments, specifically our main go-to cancer therapy, chemotherapy, okay? Since the war on cancer, declared by Nixon in 1971, we've gotten clarity around a couple things. Number one, well over $2 billion have been spent on cancer research. And number two, conventional research on cancer has found cancer to be related to oncogenes. Oncogenes are simply genes that have the ability to cause cancer, okay? And we've also pinpointed that DNA alterations also cause cancer. Okay, the only problem with this is that number one, the billions of dollars have provided no real helpful forward-moving solutions to cancer. So, i.e., improved survival rate and quality of life after cancer therapies are administered. This hasn't happened. Billions of dollars, okay, and no progress there. And number two, pointing our finger at oncogenes and mutated DNA as the cause of cancer is total BS. It's not the cause of cancer. And I'll get into more of that as we continue through the episode. But I really want to start to help people understand that genetics is the same thing as mutated DNA. It's the same thing as oncogenes. You go into your doctor visit and your doctor says, hey, you have breast cancer. And you say, oh my gosh, you feel like totally devastated. And you're like, how could I get this? How did this happen? Their response is it must be genetic. It's a total BS response. It's totally inaccurate. I'm not going to talk about the BRCA genes in this episode much, but I will in a future episode. Those are the genes that are likely test positive for somebody who's had a genetic imprint or susceptibility to breast cancer, which is also total BS. Blaming cancer on genetics, which the medical professionals do, is a total cop-out, and it's a way to just, it's genetics, leave it at that. And then we don't get to look at any other causes of cancer. Like, it's just genetics. It's not your fault. It's just something you inherited. And wow, just what bad luck that must have been for you. That's a horrible thing to say to somebody because it's not accurate, and it leaves people feeling hopeless, and it leaves them feeling like, well, I guess there's nothing I can do about this because it was just genetic. And so then they convince you to have family members tested for cancer genes and these mutations and to test their genetics to make sure that they're not at risk either. So then again, we pour more money into a totally dysfunctional system, and we continue to look for cancer in all the wrong places and not only stir up frustration and devastation and fear in yourself if you have a cancer diagnosis, but also now your family members are totally triggered and devastated as well, thinking, hey, if it's genetic, I probably have it too and need to get tested. And round the merry-go-round we go. So the industry believes cancer is caused by the presence of oncogenes and is nuclear genome, aka DNA issue. Okay. And this is what cancer studies focus on, meaning this is what they study. They study the nuclear genome or the DNA. Literally 98% of NIH funding, a major scientific institute, goes to studying the nuclear genome, and 2% goes to studying the mitochondria, which you'll learn during this episode is actually at the root cause of cancer. So you can see it's just a little top heavy, huh? Okay, back to Dr. Abel's work. After reviewing thousands of research studies and requesting the analysis and input from hundreds of oncologists, Dr. Abel came up with his conclusion around chemotherapy. It doesn't work. Literally, the studies show that if you do nothing, like I've mentioned here in this episode, you will live longer than if you get chemotherapy. There's no scientific evidence for its ability to extend in any appreciable way the lives of patients suffering from epithelial cancers. And epithelial cancers make up 80+% of all cancers, okay? I want to take a second to invite those of you resonating with this episode right now, and those of you searching for a truly holistic, alternative, and all-encompassing approach to cancer, a way to take the next step along your cancer healing path. This June 2020, I have openings in my radical health practice for 3 new private clients. Engaging in one-on-one work together allows you to deep dive into your healing process in incredibly empowering and supportive ways. By becoming a one-on-one client, we'll deep dive into your labs, your diet, your EMF exposure, sunlight, and artificial light exposure, all core elements to improving mitochondrial health and overcoming cancer. And I'll create a unique and individual alternative cancer care plan, supplement protocol, and detox protocol for you. And I'm going to walk you through this plan every step of the way. If you're ready to take this step, head over to my site and complete the contact form, or you can send me a direct message at heather.shepherd@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the episode to continue the discussion all about cancer. All right, so in 2004, another effort was made to review the efficacy of chemotherapy. And this was an independently funded study that measured the 5-year survival rate for 22 major malignancies in Australians and Americans, okay? The 5-year survival rate after chemotherapy was 2.3% in Australians and 2.1% in Americans. Okay. I suspect this is a timely place to insert one of my dad's favorite jokes that he would make after somebody he knew just got released from the hospital, and, you know, they'd say, "Oh, how did your operation go?" And my dad would always say, "The operation was a success, but the patient died." And I always laughed when he said that because he did so in like this humorous, joking way. But this is actually a reality today when it comes to using toxic drugs like chemotherapy to approach cancer. There are far better options available to us. The medical and even scientific communities funded by Big Pharma try their best, however, to keep these far safer, more effective, and life-enhancing therapies and treatments a secret from us. Not only that, they even respond to these as being dangerous. Like, you don't want to get mistletoe therapy. That could be really dangerous. You don't want to spike a fever if you have cancer. You know, we don't want to use Coley's toxins. We don't want to go that route. It could be really dangerous. When, in fact, the exact opposite is typically true. One of the most successful alternative cancer therapies known by many in the natural oncology world is mistletoe therapy. This therapy is legal in every single part of the world except the United States. However, I've found some ways around this if you reside in the United States, and this is actually a therapy you can do on yourself in your own home when you have been trained to do so. The training is actually pretty simple. And if you're not comfortable with doing this treatment on yourself, there are many trained professionals, and I guide many around this. And there are a few alternative cancer oncologists and naturopaths in the US that could help guide you through this process, or can in fact administer the treatment to you if you're not comfortable learning it or doing it on yourself. Okay, so there's lots of options for you there. And I'm actually going to do an entire episode on mistletoe therapy for cancer in the upcoming future. So hang tight there, as more info will be coming your way soon. However, right now, I want to spend a little time revealing the root causes of cancer, because the causes that, literally a pathetic 2% of scientific funding goes to studying when it comes to cancer, which is why we haven't been successful in our conventional approach to cancer, because we're looking for answers in all the wrong places. The correct place to look is the mitochondria. That's where 2% of the scientific funding goes to. And we can clearly see the relationship between cancer and mitochondrial dysfunction by diving into the work of Dr. Doug Wallace, one of the only doctors in the field of cancer looking in the right direction. And he's been doing so for the past 40 years. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with your mitochondria, briefly, these are the most important aspect of your health. Your health is only as good as your mitochondrial function. And your mitochondria are literally like your body's engine. They run the show. And we all have hundreds to thousands of mitochondria in each one of our cells. And typically, the more mitochondria we have and the bigger those mitochondria are, the healthier we are, the better detoxers we are, and the better we sleep, the more energy we have. So what happens is in cancer is that this engine literally begins to die and run out of fuel. And this engine, the mitochondria, when they start to die, this is when, cancer can progress. We can get a cancer diagnosis. And so if we want to get to the root of cancer, we really need to start by improving mitochondrial health, because with cancer, your mitochondria are literally leaking energy and running out of juice. So if we want to rectify cancer and prevent its reoccurrence, or just prevent it in general, we need to start looking at the mitochondria, and we need to implement multiple ongoing treatment strategies and holistic remedies and detox strategies into the cancer patient's protocol that target improved mitochondrial health. So I mentioned artificial light at the beginning of the episode, and really simply stated, artificial light disturbs mitochondrial health, okay? It disturbs mitochondrial signaling, and it diminishes your mitochondria's ability to produce energy, oxygen, and water. So many of you listening to this episode have likely heard of the term cancer as a metabolic disease, okay? This is really a more of a commonly known term that is used in the alternative cancer world. And when we think of metabolism, we're quick to pinpoint diet as the thing that primarily runs our body's metabolism and determines our body's metabolic capacity, right? Okay, we put food in, we metabolize it, we think if we don't have good metabolism that, maybe our digestion's sluggish, or that if our metabolism's really fast, then we just want to eat all day. Okay, this is typically what we associate our metabolism with. And while this makes linear sense, diet alone does not encompass all of our metabolism, nor is it a single powerful tool to overcome cancer on its own. Okay. So we cannot simply just look to diet as a sole treatment strategy to overcoming cancer. And they're actually much more potent contributing factors to our metabolism, including that exposure to artificial light, lack of sunlight, and exposure to man-made EMFs, which I talked a lot about in episode 13. So if you want to learn about how man-made EMFs impact your health, your mitochondrial function, and trigger metabolic diseases like cancer, then I would invite you to take a listen to that episode. So these are some main factors that compromise mitochondrial health, and anything that compromises mitochondrial health will cause your body's metabolism to malfunction. So your mitochondria are designed to do three main tasks. They pump out oxygen, water, and ATP, right? Okay, ATP we have been taught is the main mechanism associated with energy production. It has a lot of other really important roles as well, such as maintaining structured water around your cells, which is huge when it comes to preventing cancer and overcoming cancer. But these are the three main tasks that your mitochondria achieve. Pump out oxygen, okay? They pump out oxygen, and what do we know about oxygen in the cancer patient? Okay, they're deprived of it. There's an oxygen deficiency. Your mitochondria produce water. What do we know about the cancer patient's ability to produce water? It's compromised and they're dehydrated at an intracellular level. And what do we know about the cancer patient's ability to produce ATP? It's significantly compromised, right? Instead of pumping out those, 36 ATP molecules using oxidative phosphorylation, right? We can only pump out 2 using the glycolysis pathway because cancer tends towards the glycolysis pathway. So if any of these 3 major tasks of the mitochondria are compromised, your risk of all chronic diseases exponentially increases. And in fact, this is just a sure ticket to chronic disease. So these 3 essential tasks, energy production, oxygen, and water production, they also determine and make up the bulk of your metabolic health and capacity. So for those of you out there who are like, wait, but I thought sugar and carb consumption, was the only thing I needed to pay attention to when it came to improving my metabolism and overcoming cancer. Well, those are really important things to work on and to take into consideration, especially at the beginning of a cancer diagnosis and healing process. But this is only one thing that compromises the success of your metabolism, okay, and your metabolic capabilities. In fact, sugar and carb consumption is actually a necessary part of healthy metabolic function, meaning you are designed to eat some sugar and carbs. And this is where I have a little bit of beef, I guess you would say, with the ketogenic community, because they think you need to be on a ketogenic diet if you have cancer, if you're struggling with obesity, if you're dealing with any other quote unquote metabolic diseases, that you have to stay on a ketogenic diet for the rest of your life. However, this is not how we're designed to function, and this actually messes with the circadian biology if we just stay on a ketogenic diet 365 days a year. And while I often start my clients on a therapeutic ketogenic diet who have cancer, I never ever strive to have them stay on this dietary path for the rest of their life. And this is because when your mitochondria are healthy, you have metabolic flexibility and you can burn glucose, the simple form of carbs and sugars, right? So without having the negative side effects that we're taught are commonly associated with conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, weight gain, Alzheimer's, and cancer. Instead, I use the ketogenic diet as a gateway to help repair the mitochondria's ability to produce oxygen, water, and energy in combination with my health trifecta. Sunlight RX, EMF mitigation, and the jet fuel diet for cancer patients. I also incorporate specific herbal supplements, holistic therapies, and detox strategies into the mix because it's this synergistic power punch approach that we need to take when it comes to overcoming cancer. So, root causes of cancer. When your mitochondria start to fail, and there are several things that contribute to this, not just sugar and carb consumption, even more so, we can say artificial light, man-made EMFs, lack of sunlight, okay? Feeling unfulfilled with your life and job and work and purpose, okay? All of these things compromise mitochondrial function and compromise their ability to run your metabolism in really smooth, energy efficient ways, right? So if you're someone out there who has cancer, I want you to know that repairing these pathways, improving your mitochondrial health is absolutely 100% possible despite what stage of cancer you have. So I've worked with people who have stage 1 cancer to stage 4 cancer, and both have really great outcomes simply by improving their mitochondrial health and committing to an ongoing program and routine that allows them to do this, okay? So not only do you overcome cancer, but you can live a long, fulfilling, vibrant life. Okay, so maybe at this point you're thinking, how can I tell if my mitochondria are actually failing and these aspects of my metabolism are becoming compromised? Like, what are some symptoms here? How can I start to see this? And here are some you can look out for. Okay, in the beginning stages, typically when the mitochondria become compromised or start to become dysfunctional, you'll see insomnia, poor sleep habits, low energy, feelings of exhaustion, high stress, and or the inability to manage stress. So let's say like a really small thing sends you flying off the handlebars, okay? These are some key signs. Now, if you just have like one day where you like fly off the handlebars and you're totally triggered, that's not what I'm talking about. Or one night where you struggle with insomnia, or one day or that you like, oh, my energy sucks today. No, what I'm talking about is like you see this pattern start to become like your new quote unquote normal, okay? So some more advanced symptoms that your mitochondrial health and metabolism are being compromised are restless leg syndrome, depressed immunity. So maybe you catch something and it takes you forever to feel better or to fight it off, chronic moodiness, chronic fatigue, and if you're having trouble with your weight. So maybe you have trouble losing weight, or maybe you have trouble gaining weight. These are all some advanced symptoms of poor mitochondrial health. Now, a chronic disease of any kind, including type 2 diabetes, autoimmunity, obesity, cancer, these are, of course, end results of diminished mitochondrial health and metabolic function. But keep in mind, these things can all be rectified. When it comes to cancer, I believe the most effective path and the one that makes the most sense involves removing toxins from the body and not increasing toxin load. And this process involves a lifestyle shift and a deep commitment to one's path, okay? So it's not just like that one surgery, that one treatment. It's more of this commitment to, okay, I'm going to improve my diet, my environment, my lifestyle habits. I'm going to commit to my creativity and things I'm passionate about, okay? It's this total lifestyle shift. So one of the most common questions I get asked is, how long do I have to eat like this? Or how long do I have to follow this detox protocol? Or how long until I can go back to my normal life? And, we typically want an end point to things. And while the cancer treatment strategy may be more heightened in the beginning stages, so maybe you'll count more macros in the beginning of your ketogenic diet, or maybe you'll have more intense mistletoe therapy sessions or IV vitamin C, etc. It tends to become more easeful as time passes and as your health and energy levels tend to improve. However, keep in mind, healing is not a one treatment, one diet approach, or a one and done deal. Healing is a constant part of life, and a big part of the cancer therapy and path is to learn and be open to the way your life is truly desiring to shift. So, healing from a disease like cancer, I'm going to be honest, it can take years. And I don't have cancer, okay? But every day I do things to support my health, to take preventative measures to prevent chronic diseases, to prevent a cancer diagnosis, to help overcome my TBI that I experienced, over 13 years ago, okay? Healing's always this ongoing process, and healing cancer can take years, but really healing in general is this lifelong process. And one of the main inner gifts of cancer is that it can help you see and approach life with a new lens, a lens that supports not only your health, but your purpose and path in life. And this is always an ongoing process. So we don't have to view cancer therapy as a hard, arduous, or annoying process, or this thing that we just have to be done with and get it over with. In fact, when we resist something, we only make it bigger. And I'm going to guess you might have had this experience, because I have, and it's a part of life, right? So even when the tumor is completely gone, just know this healing cancer is an ongoing process. And there are many holistic, synergistic approaches to cancer far outside the realms of the conventional medical model. How you approach your healing, despite what I say, despite what your doctor is telling you, despite what book you read, how you approach your healing is 100% your choice. And I hope this episode provided you with uplifting, inspiration, and empowering alternatives to cancer treatments that maybe you haven't considered, or maybe you just simply have been pressured into other therapies when really your heart was feeling called to exploring the more natural route. It's your body, it's your choice, and whatever choice you make with regard to cancer treatment is a sacred one and one to be valued. If you're not called to engage in the conventional approach to cancer, know that this is a decision to be valued and embraced, and you will never be punished or wronged for making the decision that feels best to you. Thank you so much for listening to the Primal Pioneer podcast. I hope that this episode has helped you bring more awareness around chemotherapy and its effect on the body and cancer survival rates. Remember, the very best cancer treatment for you is not the one pushed by any practitioner, family member, spouse, or friend. It's the one that you feel intuitively called to, and this often involves multiple treatment avenues. If you're feeling discouraged by a cancer diagnosis, if you're lacking the support you desire around healing this disease, know that there are many people like you with the same questions, wonderings, and desires. And one way you can start to gain the support you need is to hop over to the Keto Cancer Solution Facebook group and share your story there with me and the community. We will support you 100% of the way. If you enjoyed this episode, I would so appreciate if you would take a second to rate and review. Each review helps more and more people just like you get to the root of their health struggles and learn more about alternative cancer therapies and radical health wisdom to support root causes of their health struggles. Don't forget to take a screenshot of this episode, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me at SunlightRx. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next week. The Primal Pioneer podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease in the Western medical sense or terms. It is to be used for educational and informational purposes only. The information shared on this podcast and all of Heather Shepard's work is not a form of diagnostic medicine, nor is it a medical treatment. Heather Shepard is a health educator, radical health practitioner, and a trained EMF specialist. And although she has a bachelor's in science and master's education in alternative medicine, she is not a medical doctor and does not give medical advice. Her work and sharing is to be used for informational and educational purposes only.